Welcome, everyone, back. Welcome back, Compassion Nation. Thank you so much for joining us tonight for another episode of our Sister Table Talk. On behalf of Pastor Herndon and Sister Kim, we just want to share with you the word in a different way on this evening. So get ready to have a talk with your sisters. I'm Saida Garrett. Sharing with me are Dr. Michelle Ratcliffe and Nicole Kinney. Now, let's talk. Nicole, you mind opening us up in prayer?
Absolutely. Let's pray. Father God, we just thank you, God. We thank you, Lord, for just waking us up and allowing us to see another day, God. We thank you for this opportunity, God, to have this conversation and connect with women around the world, God. We ask that you just be in this conversation, God, and that you would just encourage us, God, and that we just find more ways to just glorify you. And it is in your name that I pray. Amen.
Amen. All right, ladies. So we are in week, I don't know which week of our quarantine. At first it was fun to count, but now I just lost count in that whole process. But
I don't know.
What's something that you miss doing since this whole COVID-19 situation is taking place?
I miss going out. I miss date nights. I miss hanging with friends. I miss seeing friends. I miss seeing family. I really do miss just being with people. Now, I'm an introvert, but I love to be with people regardless. So I miss that. But I also think that although I miss those things, I'm looking at the things that we are actually getting from this time. And so I have a new creativity now. I have more grounding now. I'm more aware now of what's going on in the world. So it's bittersweet.
Mm-hmm. I miss the movies because I love going to the movies, so I really miss the movie theater. I'm a restaurant person, so I think Philly has amazing restaurants, so I miss being able to kind of find new spots all throughout the city and just hanging out with my friends. It's nice out, and Philly's such a walkable city, and they have festivals and stuff, so those are the type of things I miss right now.
Definitely like today, I was thinking it would be such a good time to go get a water ice and a pretzel.
Yep.
And I was just like, nope, can't do any of that, can't do anything. So
Rita's is still open, though.
really?
Is open?
Yes, it is.
I don't like
Yeah,
I'm not going to try it, but it's still open.
So, how soon do you ladies plan on going back outside? So they say when outside opens back up, right? How soon are you going to go outside once it opens back up?
I'm afraid to go back outside. Like today, I was afraid to come here. Going back outside so soon, even when they open it back up, I think I'm going to wait for the first few people to go out and make sure that it's fine, test the air, make sure that they are well, and then I'll go outside. I'm not going to rush right away. No. So I'm thinking, so they said 30 more days. I'm thinking probably 35 more days, maybe.
Okay. I seen a meme and it said, you know how iPhone comes out with the new release of a phone, and then it said they come out with the S after all the kinks are out of it. So I'm waiting for outside S to open back up, and once that opens up, then I'll go out. Then I'll go back outside. So we started off the year 2020 with such high hopes. It was a new decade. It was a new year. It was the year of perfect vision, the year of clear vision, and then next thing you know, we just got pummeled, it almost seemed like, with everything that's taking place now. So what was something that you were looking forward to in 2020 or this year that COVID-19 has just obliterated your plans?
So I had a girls trip planned in Miami, okay?
Oh, that sounds nice.
Girls trip, Miami, and we were going to the Miami Gardens. It's a festival. It's a 2-day festival. And it's all this music, and we were all hype and ready to go. We bought our tickets way back in November. We had the hotel all planned. We had the car all planned. We had everything planned, and then we went into quarantine. And then they canceled Miami Gardens. And then we were like, we're still getting on the plane. We're moms. We still went. We were Lysoling everything. We wiped down everything. We were really, just aware of what was going on, but we didn't have any fun because we were afraid. So we still went. I still have other things that I have planned for like next month. I was supposed to go away, but now we can't go. But that's okay because when outside opens up, we will go ahead and take advantage of those credits, and we will still go.
Okay. So what was your initial reaction?
Oh, we were hurt. I was hurt. But my girlfriends were like, "Yeah, right, we're going. I don't care, we're going." And I'm like, God, please keep me, protect me, watch over me. So I'm there praying all the way from the plane from Philadelphia to Miami. I'm praying all the way there. Prayed when we got into the car, wiped down everything. So, and then my allergies started to act up. And so I'm like, oh my God, see, now I got it. This is what I get for being disobedient.
When did you go?
But I went right before the quarantine. So it was March 13th through the 15th.
Okay.
So when we came back, the Miami, Miami Beach, that's when all of the spring breakers, they were there and all, and they were telling them that they had to go home and all. So we went anyway. But we just could not enjoy ourselves because we didn't have the Miami Gardens. We couldn't go out, so. But that's okay because they're going to give us our money back, and when it opens back up, we are going to go.
You can go back.
Okay.
Got it.
Yeah,
Good.
So that was long and drawn out. I'm sorry.
No. It's perfectly fine.
Happy you went. And you came back safely.
Yes.
Amen. So I praise God because I just got back from a 3-week trip in Africa.
Oh.
And
Amazing, by the way.
it was amazing. And I say that because I'm truly grateful. Even in the seasons and the moments where you can have those moments during this kind of like self-isolation season. And I have to remind myself how grateful I am that I was able to have that trip. So that was awesome. But I was looking forward to, TD Jakes had a leadership summit that I was going to go to in April that I was excited about going to. And then my alma mater had like their first like entrepreneurship summit that I was supposed to be going to, which they canceled. So, I was a little disappointed about that. But then, thank God that I was able to go to Africa. And so,
Right.
so it all balances out, right? There's still things to be grateful for, even though I know we're all experiencing disappointments that some plans have to change.
Yeah.
Like for me, I was really, really looking forward to 2020. 2019, I was like, this year has been a little bit up and down. I'm looking for 2020, a new start. Our wedding was planned for May 3rd of this year. And so, for me, I was excited about the wedding, but I really was not excited about the planning part. So we were like just about there to be done with the planning.
Wow.
And so when all this started going on, I was just like, well, I'm still getting married. I know what they're talking about. I didn't wait for this. I'm not putting it off any longer. This is the date. And then, I called the wedding venue and I was like, what are your plans for COVID-19? And they was like, everything is still going on. So people are texting me, asking me like, what's going on with the wedding? I'm like, I'm getting married May 3rd. I don't know who COVID-19 thinks she is, but I'm getting married on May 3rd. And then eventually we had to postpone that along with, the trips and all the other activities that go along with it. So at first I was bummed, and I was just like, I didn't want to tell anybody. I didn't want to put it out there. But then eventually I think you get to a point where you just start accepting it. And I think a lot of people who had plans for 2020 where they're getting interrupted and you're disappointed that those things didn't happen, you just start to accept that, it's going to change, it's not going to fully happen. So what advice would you give to somebody who did have plans, they were looking forward to something, and now they're in that space of disappointment where it's just like, I'm feeling a little bummed out. Maybe it was their birthday, a big year. I know so many children in high school, their senior year, graduating college. What would you share with them, or what advice would you give them on how to overcome that disappointing feeling?
I've just been really encouraging and trying just to instill hope, especially my students currently. I have some seniors that are going to graduate college this year. And I have some graduate students who are planning on graduating grad school this year. And now they can't graduate. Not the way that they wanted to. So now we're going to have a virtual graduation for them. And so virtual graduation is not the same as a regular graduation. But what I try to instill in them is that look where you have come from. Look at all of this hard work that you have put forth, and you have come out on the other side. So I'm just trying to instill some hope in them. some encouragement, just to give that to them, because you still have to celebrate yourself regardless. And I know I would have been bummed, like totally depressed and everything else, had this been 2 years ago, when I was supposed to graduate. Well, when I did graduate. But what I'm saying is that people take grief differently, and they take disappointment differently. And it's good for them to be surrounded by people who are going to continue to encourage them and give them that hope that they need, and just continue to celebrate them. And just to let them know that it's not going to be outside. I mean, outside is not going to be closed all the time, you know. So.
Nicole?
Yeah, and I think when we're thinking about disappointment, we talk a lot about Naomi, right?
Yeah.
And how this is someone who lost her husband, lost her sons, thought this was going to be a great season. It turned out to be everything but. And so I think, but what was so encouraging about Naomi's story is Ruth. And that Ruth represents hope. And that is because she kept her eyes on God. Yeah. And so that's what I would say. I know folks are experiencing all different types of grief, and I wouldn't even suggest that I understand all of them fully. Right. But I think what I get from Ruth is that even in those moments and seasons of disappointment, God is still there, and he's always working. And so really just praying about just being sensitive, opening your eyes to still seeing, even with the virtual graduation, something really dope could come out of that graduation, you know? Yeah. Who knows? But even having that, what I think Ruth had was that expectation. And they could be surprised. Something can happen.
Yeah, it's when you mentioned Naomi and Ruth, you know, and disappointment, two different things kind of come up. One, Naomi has this sense of disappointment because she lost both her husband and her sons. But when I look at Ruth and Orpah, they also had like this hope, right? They come from a different land, and now they get to marry into, you know, this prestigious family, you know, and really change when you kind of study like the land of Moab, where they came from and how the women were viewed, and now they get to, you know, be virtuous and things of that nature, and then that gets kind of snatched away from them. You know, there's disappointment on both sides, but I think if you look at how Naomi handles the disappointment and how Ruth handles the disappointment, there's like a complete difference. You know, Naomi was just kind of sulking in it, and Ruth was, you know, the get up and go, and we have to keep pressing forward throughout that. So both of you ladies mentioned something, and Dr. Michelle, you know, because I do want people to understand what your background is, what your profession is as well. You know, we all mentioned the word grief. And I think really what it comes down to is that our lives will never be the same.
Never.
And that is something that we have to understand and be okay with. You know, this what's happening now is going to shift our world, not just our lives, our world in so many different ways. And that is a grieving process, because we're not going to go back to some of the things that we used to do. And so Dr. Michelle, can you just explain to us your background, why we call you doctor?
They call me doctor.
And then also, you know, what are the stages of grief? Because, you know, when I think about my wedding being canceled, I didn't realize that I was grieving. You know, I didn't even realize that that's something that you can grieve. You think of grief like when someone dies, but it's just the fact of losing something that is no longer the normal. And a lot of people have a new normal now. And so can you explain to us what the stages of grief are and what they actually look like?
Well, when I think about grief and loss intertwined, because, you know, they come together. So there are 5 stages of grief, and DAPTA, that's what I normally call it: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And a lot of people don't know that they're actually going through this process of grief, because they're not even thinking that I'm actually grieving. Like, so I had a few things that we could not do, okay? We can't go outside. We have to be careful. People are dying, things like that. And we all are grieving in our own ways. And we're all processing that grief in different ways.
Right.
And so when you think about it, the first stage is denial. At first, we were all just like, is this really happening?
Yeah.
Are we really locked into our homes? We really can't go outside. We really have to be so careful. So when you think about denial, that's the first stage of grief. But a lot of people don't even go, through all of the stages how it's supposed to go. Sometimes people can skip over denial and go straight to acceptance. Okay, this is how it's going to be. All right, I can't go outside. All right, I can't do this. All right, this is how we're going to do. Okay, let me make sure I have bread. Let me make sure I have milk. Let me get the eggs. You know, that type of thing. Let me do all my research. Make sure I'm not symptomatic. You know, those type of things. So there's a process when it comes to grief, and it's really a roller coaster. When I think about grief, I think about it being a roller coaster, because some days you can be really high and be accepting of it and be cool about it. Okay, this is how it's going to be. And then there are other days when you are just like downright, you know, just depressed about it. And then that's another part of grief. So it's a process. Right now, I'm in the process, and I'm on the other side of acceptance. But I'm only on acceptance at 7:15. 8:30, I may be at depression again. You know what I mean? So it's a roller coaster.
Okay. So, Compassion Nation, tell us something that you were expecting or looking forward to in 2020 that is no longer happening, so that we can understand a little bit more about what you guys are missing out on as well, too. Okay. So I think when it comes with grief, and I think how you mentioned it, like there's so many different phases, so many different parts. And I think I never heard that before, that, you know, I think of things very linear, you know, that you have to go through the denial and then you have to go through the acceptance. But what it sounds like you're saying is that you can intertwine, you can go back and forth between those phases.
I'm still bargaining. Like, I woke up bargaining this morning, and I was like, all right, so I can go outside, but I can't touch anything. Stay 6 feet. Okay, don't do this, don't do that. So you're still bargaining. And then while I was sick with my allergies, every day I'm like, God, please don't let me have COVID. God, please don't let me have COVID. Like, please, God, please don't let me have COVID. So, and then my husband, then he started to get sick. I'm like, oh my God, now I have infected the house. So, like, I was bargaining with God about what was going on in this world right now. You know what I mean? So we go through that. And when you're grieving, you do go through that bargaining with God. Like, God, please don't take this away from me. I'll do whatever you tell me to do. Just don't take this away from me, you know?
Yeah. And it makes me think about my daughter, right? And a lot of children are experiencing this, and we may not even realize that they are going through that, you know? And so I'm watching the changes in her behavior. I'm watching her demeanor. And as a parent, you're just trying to push forward, you know, and encourage them to push forward, but they're not seeing their teachers, they're not seeing their friends. You know, we literally did ballet class in my living room on the iPad, you know, so it's very different, and we can have an eloquent conversation about it, but they may not really know how to process that or how to go through it, you know, so that's interesting.
They're really looking at us, too.
Yeah.
So we've been really cool about it. Like, when Cameron comes in, my daughter Cameron, when she walks in, wash your hands. Like, soon as she wakes up, wash your hands. Soon as she does anything, wash your hands. So, like, when she walks the dogs, come in, wash your hands. So it's like she can feel my angst in a way, but she also can feel my calm, because she knows where our help comes from. Like, we have Psalm 91 on, you know, pasted on our door, our front door, because we want to continue to keep and, you know, keep on reminding ourselves of, you know, what God's promises are. You know what I mean? And so they're going to feel, they're sponges. So whatever we're leaking out, they're going to absorb.
Right.
You know? So if you're going to leak out fear, they're going to absorb fear.
Yeah. And so I think that's something that we need to be conscious of. So, Nicole, how are you being conscious of the feelings? So we have people in our lives that look up to us, right? Sure. So how are you being conscious of those feelings that you're giving out, where because we don't know? Like, this is the first time as a parent, you know, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know when school is coming back. I don't know if dance, I don't know if there's a dance, you know, that's my answer. It's a lot of I don't knows. And I also don't want to fake it. You know, sometimes as parents or just people where we have people that look up to us, we can fake it, or we can kind of, you know, maneuver or give some hope. But the truth is, I don't know. So what would you suggest, or how would you say you can control some of the emotions that you give out, so that people who do look up to you aren't absorbing the negative ones?
Right.
That's a really good question.
Sorry, it's kind of loaded.
I was like, okay. So one of the things that I have to do, and I've been doing it, but I just have to go to God first thing in the morning.
Yes.
Very first thing. I don't look at, I have a policy, I hate to say policy, but I don't look at my phone. I don't look at my computer, anything, because this season especially, beforehand, but this season especially, I need to make sure that I have a God-centered mindset. Something else that I have really appreciated that you've said in the past, and I've been really working on, is realizing that this is a season.
Yes.
And I think sometimes, I really appreciated when Pastor Herndon talked a lot about managing your emotions. And one of the things that I remember him always saying was, don't get too high off the highs or too low off the lows.
Yes.
And learning something else I've been learning is how to be certain in uncertainty. And the only thing I can be certain in is in God and his character.
Yes.
That's it. Yep. And so how I've been trying to kind of control what I give off is really just trying to stay as mindful as possible and mindful about God and his promises.
Right.
And then other things too, just not inundating myself with news, looking for moments where you can laugh and have fun. And like you said, you don't know. Like I used to be I still am kind of that person where you want to know everything, give me like a year plan, but I'm learning to accept, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow.
Yeah.
And that's okay. It's okay. And the Bible talks about that, just focusing on today, but now you really just can focus on today. but really, that is my new normal, where, the Bible talks about, having a plan and the Lord directs your steps. But I really feel like you have to really walk that out in this season, is that you're really sensitive to how the Lord is leading you each and every day.
Yeah. So it looks like a few of our Compassion Nation, some people had trips planned. I hope y'all were going someplace warm. I was going to Jamaica, so I'm excited for that. Proms, birthdays. I've seen a lot of birthday celebrations online, and I think I've seen people like struggling with celebrating their birthday because it's like you don't want to be too happy, but at the same time, you also still want to be able to celebrate, and so it's a new thing. So I've seen a lot of interesting birthday celebrations. So happy birthday to anyone who's out there celebrating a birthday. We still want to celebrate you and congratulate you as well, too. And so I also think about going back to like Ruth and Naomi, right? And so you have this process. So Naomi, they're leaving their homeland, they're going back to Naomi's homeland, and she's with Ruth and she's with Orpah, and she's like, you know what? Y'all should just go back home. This doesn't make sense. Let's not continue on. And then Orpah is like, no, we're going to stay with you. But then Naomi was like, no, like you really should just go back home. And finally, Orpah's like, okay, I'm out. But then Ruth, on the other hand, was like, don't you ask me again to leave you. I said I'm staying with you. I'm down for the ride. So as we're going through this grieving process, what are some people or, how can you surround yourself with people who are going to be your Ruth? We were joking and saying, you better get you a Ruth. Ruth was a ride or die. She said, I'm not leaving no matter what. If you go, I go. If you die, I die. Your God going to be my God. So how do we surround ourselves with people like Ruth where they're truly going to be with us through this journey no matter where it takes us?
Yeah, we all go through different journeys throughout life. And that's how you really know who your friends are. Like, that's how I've been able to evaluate life, who my friends are, who are those people who are really going to ride for me. And just throughout life, And in this season, I feel like more people are open to being, just being around you, but not around you. We have to keep that 6 feet. We haven't seen, I haven't seen my mom in weeks. And I haven't seen a lot of people in weeks. But we are able to FaceTime. We're able to call each other. And we're able, just to text each other, hey, how's everything going? Keep those people in mind. Because when you're going through, keep those people in mind. It's important to keep those roots in your life. You know what I mean? I think it's just important to have those people who are always going to have your back, who are always going to root you on. And just always, even when you're down, they're able to help to pick you back up, you know, because even with Naomi, when Naomi came into her new, came back to her town, she said, "Call me Mara. I'm bitter," because she was so bitter about things. But I'm here to tell you that this is not going to be a bitter season for us.
Yeah.
I mean, although we have some losses, we're not going to use this as a bitter season. We
Right.
are going to use this because we already know we stand on the promises of God. So
Right.
we're not going to use this as a bitter season. We're going to get those roofs in our lives,
Yes.
and keep those people in our lives, and we're going to keep them moving.
Yeah, yeah. I think too the other point of that is I think we can't get mad at people if they are a Orpah
Yeah.
because everybody is processing different, So some people are going to be your Ruth, they're going to be your ride or die, but then you are going to have some people that they may have all the intention in the world to support you through this. They just may not know how, because it's April the 2nd. I think today is April
Yeah.
2nd. So,
Yeah.
people
Think
are
about it.
people are losing jobs, they're not sure where their income is going to come from. We're going to see times where, people may lose their homes, their jobs, things are not going to, it's going to be, some people are going to go through some rough times.
Right.
And we can't necessarily get mad at somebody or upset with someone if they can't truly support us like Ruth did, because she was processing her own grief.
Absolutely.
She also was dealing with the fact that her husband just died as well
Right.
too. And I'm getting ready to leave my homeland and go to a new land as well too. So, what balance would you say, or like what can we do to self-adjust so that we aren't, as you mentioned, too high on the highs or too low on the lows, that we can handle people correctly? And what's your guide or your lean to on how to handle and decipher? I know it's like so deep, but it's not really deep, but I think it is a thing because we expect people to be there. I expect people to be there. But everybody is going through their own thing. And in this time when we don't know, I don't want to cut you off, but at the same time, I want you to be there. So what do you lean to decide on that? And that can be for anybody.
Thank you, Saida, for that question. No. So I think I have two thoughts. The first thought would be, and this is just my opinion, but I think you have to be a Ruth to get a Ruth. And what I mean by that is, and I've been trying to better understand Naomi and understanding the season that she was in. And I don't know her relationship with God or anything like that. But in my study, when I was looking at commentaries, they were saying, Ruth probably learned about God through Naomi, including her husband, but through Naomi.
Right.
So that means that Naomi at one season was modeling, I believe, some Ruth-like tendencies.
Yes.
And then Ruth was also very kind. I mean, Naomi was very kind to Ruth, right? Because even when Naomi was miserable, she was still looking out for Ruth. She said, Ruth, go, get married again.
Right.
And so I think that just tells me that, I think as you mentioned, we all have seasons. We all have seasons. And so there might be people going through this right now who are not as impacted, but there's someone else who is. So you might need to be the Ruth. And then trust and believe, if you live long enough, you might be a Naomi.
Yes.
And you're going to want a Ruth. So that's how I generally try to be just as a friend. It's not always about you. Sometimes you just have to walk alongside someone. To your question about how being sensitive, if you're like an Orpah, I think recognizing that they're not God. So sometimes I think we think, well, they weren't there for me, they weren't there for me. They're not God.
That's good.
And so he is still to be the first person that you come to, and he's so gracious and kind that even with Naomi, he brought Ruth to walk alongside her, which is what he often does for all of us. But there are sometimes seasons where even when a person's walking alongside you, you're still grieving. You're still in pain. And that has always showed me that God is still the first person that you have to go to. And then, he'll bring community, to help support you as well. Yeah.
That's good. So, Compassion Nation, I want you to go ahead and tag who your ride or die is, who is your Ruth in this season that that person is going to be there for you. And then I want to encourage you to make sure that, as Nicole said, I like that, if you want a Ruth, you need to be a Ruth. Okay,
That's
so
good.
go
That's real
ahead and
good.
tag who your ride or die is, who is your Ruth in this time or in this season. And so another thing I want to talk about is our reaction. When we find out that something is changing or, we're losing something, I know for me, my reaction, my first thought is not always a positive thought. You know, even though I would like it to be, and I am a positive person, you go through a process. You know, like when the economy is coming down and so many things are going on, I'm like, what about my business? I'm going to have to close. You know, how am I going to pay? How am I going to pay the? You know, you are thinking about so many different things. So, how do we, for someone whose first thought is not positive, you know, is that something bad, something good, or like how can we think more on the good things without thinking about the bad things first?
I think it's okay to sit with it. It's okay to feel this way. I mean, we are in uncertain times, and it's okay to just be present with how you are feeling, because that's how you can process it.
Yeah.
Like you're just going to come in and you're going to kick the dog, but you got to know why you're kicking the dog. Why are you angry? What is so frustrating? Like you have to be more self-intuitive. Like you have to just reach inside and see like what really is going on with your life that you have to do or feel this way.
Right.
And if you are feeling this way, let's process this. And then let's think about how we're going to change our reactions. Pastor Herndon preached a sermon many years ago, and I still even have the book, and it talked about godly responses first, like having a godly response first. And that has stuck with me for a long time because that's something that I strive to have. I'm always thinking about, so what can I have? Like, how can this be a godly response? Now, at first, initially, we all were just alarmed. We were all like, our safety was threatened. Our families are threatened. People are dying from this. So we are all alarmed at first. But then you have to think about it. Like, I'm always going back to the promises of God, you know what I mean? And what we stand on and what we believe in, who we believe in. And it's just, you know, you just got to change your perception about things. So I always talk about changing perceptions. And instead of thinking, as I said this before, instead of thinking that I'm stuck in a house, I'm actually safe in a house.
I love that.
You know what I mean? I'm safe in this house. And in here, I have safety. I have refuge. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you got to think about those different things, having a godly response, but then also think about like how God is already keeping you. He's protecting you. He has built a refuge for you. You know, so I hope I answered the question.
Yeah.
I
No,
always
that
go
was
off.
that was
Yeah,
that was
So,
good.
yeah.
And I'm listening because it's something, you know, we're not just here giving advice. It's something that we're also processing as well,
we're
too.
getting
And
through
so,
it.
you know, I really appreciate having your perspective and your professional perspective, which, by the way, you never told us why we call you doctor.
Oh, well, we called me Dr. Michelle Radcliffe, because I have my doctorate in marriage and family therapy. I am a social worker. I've been a social worker for the last 20 years. And currently I am a professor at Delaware State University, where I actually teach social workers, which I love. So I don't get a chance to practice during the school year. I actually only get a chance to practice during the summer. So I already have a job lined up where I will be practicing, and I'll be providing therapeutic services to families. So that's who I work with. I currently provide premarital counseling here at the Church of Christian Compassion also. And that is something else that I completely love. I've been married for 20 years, so I think I know a little something, not everything, but a little something about marriage. So that's why they call me Michelle. Well, Dr. Michelle.
Dr. Michelle, I almost want to change the conversation. Like, well, can we talk about premarital? And they changed my date. I need to agree.
Yes, and we talk
I
about
need to
those
grieve
kind
the
of
process.
expectations. Really, we talk about expectations and disappointments, because that is something that we are all going to go through this entire year.
Yeah.
You know?
Okay. And so I've also seen something on social media, and it says, I feel like I'm on punishment and I didn't even do anything, you know? And I was like, that's true. I kind of do feel like that, like we're getting punished and I didn't even do anything. But a lot of times, the point that I'm going to bring back today is a lot of times when something happens, we automatically think that it's a punishment, or we automatically feel like God is upset with us, or he's punishing us in some sort of way. So, you know, that causes so many emotions. That can cause, you know, anxiety or depression, or, you know, I just feel so bad about myself because what did I do to, you know, have this come about me? So how can we encourage people on how to be able to trust God and his character? Like to truly know who he is, and that this is not, you know, something where we're being punished for necessarily. Now, he does have his moments when he does those, but a lot of times we just naturally internalize the negative that we're being punished for something. What about God do we know that we can say, you know what, I can trust him in his character, and this is not necessarily a punishment for me?
Well, I've struggled for a couple of years, and this is just something personal, but it's meaningful. But I struggled for years being upset with God, like even mad with him, like really angry with him for a circumstance that happened in my life. And excuse me, and I was just so hurt and so upset. I'm like, God, I'm doing all these things, man, and I'm doing this. I'm serving you. I'm tithing. I go to church. I do all of this.
Yeah,
You know, I'm
yep.
a good person. You know what I mean? You
I've
throw
definitely been
all of
there.
those things out because you're like, well, you know, you're trying to get merit for something that
Right.
God is already doing all of these things anyway for you. And then you get this disappointment, and then you're angry about it. Then you become bitter, like Naomi was in a way.
Yep.
But excuse me, I'm sorry, the allergies.
Is that the Rona?
Yeah. 6 feet.
I know, right?
Turn
I'm
up.
sorry.
Playing.
10 feet,
We're
10
playing.
feet, 10 feet. I'm so sorry. But she even became bitter about it. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? But look at the redemption that came from it. You know, we have to think about, we know God's character. We know who he is.
Yes.
We know what he can do. And there is no doubt. Like, think about his track record, how he has pulled you out of the muck and mire, how he has done so much for you throughout all of these years. And you mean to tell me you're going to sit back and be all bitter about it? No, you don't have a chance to be bitter about it. Not when you have seen his whole entire track record. Okay, so you're not going to get married May 3rd, but when you do get married, baby, okay, that dance is going to come. You know what I mean?
Right.
But just think about, like, maybe May 3rd just wasn't that day for you. Maybe, you know, July 5th is the date for you, and you don't know what kind of blessings that he has for you down the line.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And that's what I keep thinking about, and that's how I changed my perception about being so angry with God, because I had the audacity to be angry with God, the
Yes.
one, the creator. You know what I mean? I had the audacity to feel that way, but I had to change my perception and change how I actually looked at God, and not looking at him for what he could give me,
Right.
but for, you know, him just being the creator. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
That's good. That's good. Now, I know, Nicole, I know we have had conversations about being angry with God. So in my head, I'm like, I know she's going to share something on this point.
Oh my gosh. First of all, I'm just grateful that you shared that,
Yeah.
because I didn't know when I felt angry with God that was even normal. And I really wrestled with that. I just was like, I shouldn't be feeling this way, you know. And I remember we just had it out. Like, we just
got
did.
some nerve.
But I will never forget this. I was at Bible study. It was still noonday Bible study. I think it was Taisha, and she was preaching, and it was on Jeremiah. And they call him the weeping prophet. Is that right, Jeremiah? And I remember reading and how he wailed before God. And I was like, it's not just me. So I felt, and I say that to say, God can handle it, number one. And number two, I feel that the more honest I am with God, the more space I give him to kind of be honest with me, and also kind of encourage me and speak to me. And so for those who are grieving in this season, I think it is important to just be open and honest with God. And I have found my relationship with God has grown tremendously
Wow.
when I was able to be that honest.
Honest.
Because I was holding that back. And you be like that sometimes, right? You be acting like everything cool, but you know it ain't cool.
It's not cool.
And God know it ain't cool, because sometimes I think God is like emojis in my head, so he be looking at me like this. He's like, you know we not cool. And so it's like when I remember that moment like it was yesterday, and when I was able to finally just wail about a circumstance, exactly like you said, not saying that anyone deserves anything, but when you think you live in a whatever, and God will humble you quick too.
Yes.
Really quick.
Yes.
Really quick. But that is when I really learned God's character. And what I would also say is God is love.
Yes.
Yep.
And it is so important to remember, he is your father. He loves you.
Yes.
And what I love so much about the story of Ruth and Naomi, again, is She thought she lost everything.
Yes.
Yes.
Had no idea that she was on the cusp of a miracle.
Yes. Yes.
You know, and to let that encourage people in this season. You might be experiencing enormous loss, but there is such hope, you know, and because in a couple of days, it could be something you've never imagined. And then you know how we love testimonies?
Yes.
You know, we love a good testimony.
Yeah.
And the last thing I would say, and it's practical, and a friend gave me this advice, and I did it over the weekend, because she's been a friend of mine since high school, so she's seen a lot of my life, the highs and the lows. And she said, Nicole, I want you to create a timeline of God's miracles.
Wow.
Wow.
And I started at 16, because when I was 16, I lost my family's home in a fire. So our whole life was uprooted. We had to move and everything like that. So I started at 16. And every miracle that I could remember, I created like a mark on a timeline. And so when I have little moments where you kind of get into those little moments, I just go look back at the timeline. So to your point, reminding myself of God's character. It's a new situation, but I know God's a provider. I know he's a healer. I know he's a restorer. I know he's a miracle worker because he's done it.
Yep.
Right.
You know, so that's been what's been really encouraging me.
It's his track record.
It's his track. You have to remind,
Think
and
about
that's
his
why he would
track
always
record.
say that. He would say, remember,
Yes.
Yeah.
you know, so yeah.
Yep. So if you, Compassion Nation, if you ever felt that way, go ahead and drop some hearts. You don't got to put in the chat that was you. Okay, this is us being honest, but just go ahead and drop some hearts, because we all definitely have been there. And I think something that was very important is that it's in these seasons that gives birth to some of the most wonderful and miraculous things. You know, I think about Ruth and how she's going through this time, and she had to, even in the down times, because, you know, she lost her husband, her mother-in-law essentially is just depressed. You know, everywhere, you know, as you mentioned, Naomi came back to Bethlehem, and everybody said, oh, Naomi, we missed you. It's Naomi. They were so excited, and she was like, don't call me Naomi. Call me Mara, you know, because the hand of God is against me. Like, she was in a bad place. And so it really had to take Ruth to do something different, you know, where she went to Naomi and said, you know, can I go work in the field and just collect the scraps? That's something she may probably have never done, never been used to. But it's in these times that we have to be adaptable. We have to learn how to humble ourselves during these times and say, you know what, things are not going to go back to how they used to be. And that's okay. You know, I may have to do something online that I've never done before, but we have to humble ourselves and adapt, because had Ruth, and we talked about this a little bit, right? Orpah ends up going back, and we never hear anything about her again. That's it. You know, it's a done story, and she could have a good life. You know, just as Naomi told her she could have a good life. But then Ruth persevered, goes through, humbles herself. Everything is completely changed around her. And through her faithfulness, through her comes the lineage of Jesus Christ.
Yes.
You're like, to me, that was like mind-blowing, you know, because we have to press and persevere during these times. And it's in times like this, even from a business perspective, that some of the most booming businesses have come from being in a downtime. And so it's not just looking at it as this is something bad, but we have never been more creative.
Right.
Think about how creative you have been. You know, I made a joke, and I could say you could tell who's from the hood and who's not from the hood, or who grew up with and who grew up without, because, you know, we got real creative in how we were going to entertain ourselves. You know, I wasn't missing too much technology because I had been here before, but, you know, there's so much creativity that we have, and this is a great opportunity. God, in his track record, during everything, right? He sent the flood, then he sent the rainbow. During everything at the end, we know that there's going to be a blessing, something bigger and better that we couldn't even imagine. So the question is, are you even looking? Are you, you know, the song says, I'm looking for a miracle, right? Are you even looking for what's going to come after this? And that just got me, I got excited.
Yeah.
I got fired up thinking about
I
that.
was thinking, like last week, I just woke up and I said, you know what? I'm going to use this time wisely. And I've been saying this all along. Like, I've just been encouraging a lot of people. I'm like, take advantage of this time. Like, I've never worked from home ever in my entire life. And now I have the opportunity to work from home. I don't like it too much because I like to get up and get out.
Yeah.
But I'm working from home. And in that, like, I wrote a mini grant. You know what I mean? I just wrote a children's book. Like,
Yes.
I'm doing things.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I
Yes.
mean? Like, I'm writing an article to be published. Like, I'm doing some things using my creativity and not just sitting idle. Like Ruth. She was not trying to sit idle. Sis was
wasn't.
up and out. And she was like, okay, this is what we have to do. This is what's going on. And she made something good out of a bad situation.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And that's
Yes.
what we really have to think about. Like, how are we going to make something good out of it seems hopeless, but it's not, an uncertain time. You know what I mean? How are we going to make something good out of this situation? Think about that, you know?
That was good. It just brought a song to my spirit. Y'all,
You gonna
I'm like-
sing?
No, I'm not.
Go ahead.
I'm not going to sing. But it reminded me of the song, and I'm like, I love me some old school gospel. He took me and made something beautiful out of my life. You ever heard that song?
You're gonna have to sing it.
Go ahead.
I'm not going to sing it, but if you know that song,
I
y'all
don't
know what
know
I'm
that
talking
song.
about. He took me and made something beautiful
Yeah, I
out of
have
my
to go-
life.
I have to
He
go
took
look it up.
a wretch like me, and showed his loving concern. And by his grace, he made my life a new and better one. I owe him my all, and I will never let him down, for he's the one who's made something beautiful out of my life. I love that song, and that's what it reminded me of. And it's during these times that that's that what's that old school
Yeah,
gospel.
I saw it.
But I love that, and it's in times where we feel hopeless that there is so much hope. And I think even in the story of Ruth, right? Because we talked a lot about Ruth and Naomi, and a lot of people, when I first heard about the story of Ruth, it's really focused on the Boaz. And it's focused on the redemption. But I think in just studying it, I learned so much just about them as women and just going through that process, that it's like, we know God is going to redeem, but how do you go through? It's the how you go
Right.
through that really, that they did, that God redeemed them, And so I think this is something that we can share a little bit about, that we know that there's going to be a redemption, because we know his character. So what encouragement would you share with people on how to stay hopeful, how to look for those hopeful things when it feels like, there's not much hope?
Did you want me to answer that?
Yeah, that was just a question or a thought. Just your thoughts on it. How do you stay hopeful when you feel like there's not that much hope?
So my devotional this morning, it's called Get Out of Your Head. Pretty good devotional because it helps me, because sometimes I do get stuck in my head. But I wrote down this particular scripture, and I can't find it now. So you can go, Nicole, until I find it.
So one of the things that's been really encouraging to me, and I think Ruth demonstrates this, is I remember a pastor had said a while ago that I really struggled with disappointment. And I felt like what he basically said is sometimes you don't know you've really had faith until you've been disappointed.
Yes.
And I didn't realize that. I think that really, and so for me, what that showed me is that it is possible to be disappointed and hopeful. I mean, they almost live together. I think sometimes we think they're opposites of each other. So I was thinking, because I'm disappointed, I cannot hope. But it's sometimes things work out according to your plan, and your plan and God's plan is the same.
Right.
And then other times, God has a different plan.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
And so what it's been teaching me about seasons of disappointment is that God has a better plan. And so my hope has to be anchored in God. It can't be anchored in the outcome.
Yes.
And I think sometimes, well, I'll talk about myself. Sometimes you get so hopeful about the outcome
Yes.
or the circumstance. And so when that outcome and circumstance don't work out, then you got no hope. Because it's,
Right.
But if, and this is what I love, and I try to always just incorporate into my prayers when it says, God, not my will, but your will. And just reminding myself that I would love things to work out this way, but understanding because you are a loving Father,
Yes.
because you know what the plan is for my life,
Yes.
to really be hopeful in Him. And that's what lifts my spirits. Because seasons change, circumstances change, people change, everything changes. And God always stays the same.
He does. And I think too, like, what if we change the perspective? How you mentioned, Dr. Michelle, where, we were so fired up for 2020. What if this is just God clearing our view?
Right.
Wow.
What if we looked at this as this is experiencing God at an extraordinary time in a way? This is opening up so that all those things we talked about we could do, we now actually can do. Because as we know, you cannot solve a problem at the same level that it was created. Meaning that, and that's something they call like the law of the lid, but you have to have change. And change is what produces growth. People say they don't want to change. Well, they're really saying they don't want to grow.
Right.
And so God literally shook the world up. He changed it. But what if we look at it as we needed this to happen for us to really go forward? Because I mentioned earlier, the world will never be the same again. But what if we needed this push to really go, like, look what we're doing right now. We are having online Bible studies reaching, thousands of people. I was going to say millions, but I was thinking that into existence, right? Yeah. But reaching thousands of people. We knew that we could use technology before, but look how forward advancing we're using it. And how forward advancing, Wawa is delivering. I know. But it's literally pushing us and challenging us as a world, as a people, to, really take advantage and get to the next level. Because what if our level wasn't as big as what God's level was thinking? Right. What if our vision for 2020 was so limited that he said, no, y'all got to think bigger than that. Right. Y'all got to come up bigger than that. And I got to really do something, make something happen for that to be there. So just something to think about as far as perspective. As we get getting ready to wrap out, close out, when people have plans that did not go their way and aren't going their way, what advice could we share that could help us, myself included, really cope and persevere through the time that seems so tough?
Yeah. I just kept thinking, like when you were talking, if you have never trusted God ever in your whole life, like in all of your years, this is the time to trust him. Just to know that he has your back. Like he has us in the palm, in the palm of his hands. Like this is the time to trust him and put all of your faith in him. Like there's nothing else that you could even think of that can save you at this point besides Jesus Christ. You got to think about that. Because I just always talk about your perceptions and how we always have to just change our thinking. When you change your thinking, you change your emotions and you change your behaviors. And so it's important. It's a cycle. And if you can change those thoughts, thinking about what God has really been doing for you, like it just totally changes the outlook. It changes how you feel about it. It changes how your behaviors are. It changes how, how even when you look back on this in another year, like, you know what, it was hard. Like we're going to be like, it was hard, but God kept us.
Exactly.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it was hard, but I had bread. You know what I mean? It was hard, but my bills were paid. You know what I mean? Like it was hard, but you know what I mean? And the scripture that I was talking about earlier, it's a scripture that really saved me this morning because I told you, like we've been going through this cycle of grief. Yes. And so right now it's a different, than a different cycle or a different stage than I was earlier. And this scripture, I've probably read it 17 trillion times before, but today it really stuck and it really like opened up my eyes. And it's something really simple, and it just says, those who live according to the flesh, who set their minds on the things of the flesh, and those who live according to the Spirit set their minds on the things of the Spirit. And you got to think about that. We're not going to set our mind on the things of the flesh. We're not going to be thinking about all of the craziness that's going on and continuing to watch CNN. CNN. But like we're not going to keep on thinking about that. We have to set our minds on Jesus Christ. Like we have to set our minds on things above because that's the only thing that's going to keep us sane.
Yes.
That's the only thing that's going to really keep you at this point, I'm sorry I monopolized.
No, listen. I'm listening. I'm just like
it's just so true because that's just my process.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You have to have a process when you're going through a tough time. And then either you're going to sink or swim.
Yeah.
I can't swim, but look, I'm going to tread real good and do a doggy paddle,
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's so intriguing because I can express it, but having the balance between knowing all the right terms and you know, I think I've heard somebody say before, you know, you can have faith in God and still have a therapist. You know, there you go. So, you know, how can people, if they wanted to, connect with you more on just so that we can hear it? Like we may have these thoughts, but there's a term for it. You know, there's a definition, and we need somebody to help us process because there are so many thoughts that we have right now. We don't know how to process them. So
And it's important for anyone and everyone, really. I know I'm going to see one of my friends when this is over because it's important for you to process what's going on because we all have grief and loss in different ways. So it's important for you to speak to someone. You can have Jesus and a therapist. Like, who do you think the therapist came from? I came from Jesus. You know what I mean? Who is imparting in me is Jesus. So, but if you need to get in contact with me, you can contact the church's office because I do provide counseling here. So I'm part of the counseling team here, and that's not at a cost. So that's a good thing. So it will be good for you to first, you know, you can try here or you can speak with other people. So there's a long list of people who are providing telemedicine and teletherapy. So you don't have to go into an office. You can actually just call someone and they can provide the therapeutic services over the phone, which is just brilliant. We have found so many different avenues and so many ways virtually how we can just help people out and how we can be a support.
yeah, I feel like the church lines are going to be blowing up because I'm thinking like, how can
We
I
have
get
a
an
whole
appointment?
team.
You know,
Yeah, it's a whole team of us. There's a whole
can
team
I
of
be
us.
first in line?
Say, could I just add to, I think it's really important in this season to practice gratitude.
Yes.
And I love so much last week you talked about the weather being nice.
Yes.
Even though we're safe, you said safe in instead of stuck
Oh,
in.
we're instead of saying we're stuck in the house, we're safe in
We're
the
safe
house.
in the house. So, yeah, I was like, so even today, I was like, it's really nice today. The sky looks really nice today. And I think in this season especially, practicing gratitude. You know, I learned to listen to hear the birds chirp because it reminds me that if God's protecting the birds, then he got me.
Yes.
You know, so I that's another way that I'm processing is just thanking God for the air. Like you said, fresh air, because everywhere we go now is just Lysol everywhere. So it's like just fresh air, you know?
Yeah. Lysol and hand sanitizer,
Yeah.
like Dr. Michelle got over there. Hi.
Yes. It's serious.
But I really just want to. I was looking through and I was thinking about you know, so much has changed with COVID-19. You know, the economy is changing, people's jobs are changing, their family situation is changing, and you know, we don't really know what to look for. But I think one thing that remains the same is God, and He reminds us of that. And so I just want to share really quickly some scriptures that talks about how He remains the same, because we mentioned, you know, you have to trust God, you have to know His character. But what is His character? So Isaiah 40 and verse 28 says, "Have you not known? Have you not heard? The Lord is the everlasting God." That means all this can change, but God is going to stay the same. Hebrews 13 and 8 says, "Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever." You know, you can have that. Malachi 3 and 6, "For I, the Lord, do not change. Therefore you, O children of Jacob, are not consumed." Hello, we will not be consumed because he said he does not change. You know, Numbers 23 and 19. "God is not that he should lie, nor a son of man that he should change his mind." You know, what he said and what he promised for us is for us. And there's so many, we could probably go on and on, but just stay encouraged, Compassion Nation. Just stay true, knowing that God, you can trust him. We can't trust anything else. We don't know what's happening tomorrow, but we can trust him, and we know that he will never leave us nor forsake us with that. And so I'm just so thankful to have this opportunity to chat with you ladies and to talk more and really to share, you know, what the Lord has given to us and how he provides for us. And here at the Church of Christian Compassion, we do so many wonderful things. And I love how we're still out and about. We're still taking care of our communities, and we're still serving even over today, we've gave away almost 500, like I think like 500 families or so that we fed today. And so none of this gets done, without your support. So there are many ways that you can give here at the Church of Christian Compassion, because people are looking for hope. They are looking for something. They're looking for their constant. And we're out there every single day making sure that we can provide. So I know they put it up on the screen, all the different ways that if you want to support, everything that you give will go to feeding those families, providing food for them during this time where there is, uncertainty in their lives. We want to be a constant, knowing that they can come here, that they can count on our church to be able to provide for them food and services. So thank you all so much for joining us with us tonight. We're going to go ahead and close out in prayer. And Dr. Michelle, do you mind closing us out on this evening?
God, I thank you. We thank you for all that you have done, all that you are going to do in the midst of just chaos right now, God. But we know that you are a healer. We know that you are a person that will make a way out of no way, a God that is just here and will always be here for us, that you will never leave us or forsake us. God, I just thank you for protection, for safety, for all that you are doing. God, I'm just asking that you will continue to encourage the hearts of your people, those who are disappointed, those who are feeling like they are missing out on things that had to be rescheduled, God. But we already know that there's redemption coming. We already know that you already are going to make another way for them, God. And so we just thank you and we honor you today. And God, we just thank you for this time spent. It's well spent, a productive time that we are here just to encourage your people. And we thank you and we honor you and we bless your name. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.